Hello YouTube and welcome back to World of Warships with Wadres again, and for today's video I am going to be reviewing the Tier 6 Premium Aircraft Carrier, the Ark Royal. Yes, I have decided to go ahead and purchase her due to the Wargaming 4th Anniversary specials and everything. Given time with the game, I actually received a coupon for the premium shop for this, for any ship that I chose to purchase. And I opted to go for the Ark Royal simply for her historical significance, and the simple fact that I really didn't have much of a desire to get any of the other ships that I haven't already gotten. So there is that. And with that in mind, I do have to say that the Ark Royal is an interesting ship to have in-game, and primarily due to her historical significance more so than anything else. As has been noted by reviews from other community contributors, etc. and so forth, she does have a few suffering points, mainly in the fact that, well, her aircraft are not exactly the fastest, they are not the most survivable, but they are definitely at least historical for the aircraft carrier, and that is basically the primary point of having the Ark Royal in-game to begin with, is just the historical significance of the ship. She was involved in hunts for the Graf Spee, the Gneisenau, the Scharnhorst. She was also involved in the sinking of the Bismarck. In fact, it is largely due to torpedoes from the Ark Royal's Fairey Swordfish torpedo planes that the sinking of the Bismarck was even made possible, due to the fact that one of those torpedoes hit on her stern quarters and jammed her rudder in a 15-degree turn to port, and basically allowed her basically it kept her from continuing to run towards the coast of occupied France, where she would have been able to gain assistance from the Luftwaffe, among other things, and it also simply enabled the British fleet to catch up to the Bismarck. Also from the simple fact that the course the Bismarck was ultimately able to set, due to a number of mechanical variations trying to offset the jammed rudder, basically forced the Bismarck to steam directly towards the British fleet. Now, the Ark Royal was sunk on the 13th of November 1941. She was struck by a torpedo from a German U-boat and sunk, and thus ended a very, very significant historical ship. You can have her in World of Warships. She is a Tier 6 aircraft carrier, and as I've already mentioned, she is definitely not the best, but she is at least reasonably capable. When she is top tier, she is at least capable of holding her own against a lot of the enemy ships that you will see in-game. But I will say, hands down, due to the very slow speed of her aircraft, among other things, especially the Fairey Swordfish, which are what she is most recognized for as far as her historical complement, well, let's just say you're not going to be getting away from a whole lot of AA fire. These old slow biplanes do tend to sit in the AA bubble for quite an extensive amount of time. They do absorb a lot of AA damage, and to that end, while Wargaming has tried to at least offset the losses that you are guaranteed to take from playing this ship, there is just simply the fact that she is going to ultimately just lose aircraft and have to replenish them over time, which isn't necessarily a bad thing with the current world of aircraft carriers. It's just the simple fact that you are going to lose them frequently and be forced to have to go through the aircraft replenishment time, which, even though it is shortened to compensate again for the low health pool and low speed of her aircraft, is still a significant loss in terms of the carrier's overall battle potential. As opposed to going directly into the ship's stats, I am going to make some direct recommendations as to what you can do to bring the capabilities of this aircraft carrier out a little bit better, and I will discuss the stats a little bit later. As far as the direct modules that apply to the ship, I would definitely say apply Air Groups Mod 1, Aircraft Engines Mod 1, Torpedo Bombers Mod 1, and Torpedo Bombers Mod 2. This improves the restoration time of your aircraft, it improves the speed boost of your aircraft, as well as the attack time and the health pool of your torpedo bombers, which are where this particular aircraft carrier shines. As far as commander skills in that same note, I would definitely go ahead and recommend improved engines for a level 2 skill to just help these very anemically slow aircraft move just a little bit faster around the map. Torpedo acceleration, because the torpedoes themselves are rather slow at 35 knots. I would also recommend aircraft armor to make the aircraft just a little bit tankier in that AA bubble, just because they are going to be sitting in that AA bubble for substantially longer than the aircraft of most other aircraft carriers. I might even go so far as to recommend Adrenaline Rush as a second level 2 skill, just so that as the aircraft do absorb damage, they can move a little bit faster still within the AA bubble, so as they take hits, maybe they will perform a little bit better under those circumstances. As far as other recommendations, I would also probably look at Survivability Expert as your level 3 skill, or one of them, just to help your aircraft be, again, just a little bit tankier. I would also look at considering the improved engine boost skill, which will also just allow your engine boost to last a little bit longer still and help your aircraft move around a little bit faster, because you're definitely going to be holding your engine boost just to try and get anywhere, as far as I've noted. As far as a couple of other single 1-point skills, you might either look at Last Gasp, which would restore the engine boost for the last attack flight. Either that, or quite possibly Direction Center for Fighters, which would give you an extra fighter for any use of the fighter consumable, and just increase your ability to basically control an area of the map with fighters, especially trying to dissuade enemy aircraft from getting into the area, or to defend your own ship when your ship automatically uses its fighter consumable to ward off incoming enemy aircraft. But that is really about it. There are not an incredible number of things I can think of to really draw this aircraft carrier's abilities out too much, because again, she is going to be far from the best aircraft carrier. There is no doubt about that in my mind. And it is going to take an incredible amount of skill to get really anything out of this carrier, as far as I have noticed. Again, the primary point of this aircraft carrier is just to have a ship of noted historical significance in the game, and just to kind of have fun playing her in whatever form she happens to be able to settle into. She is, and for that regard, I will definitely say she is a beautiful ship. She is also noted as being one of the first aircraft carriers to have the hangar deck as an actual part of her design, instead of something that was added on later in the development process, rather than just being basically an addition to the superstructure or anything like that on top of an existing cruiser or battleship hull. So there is that to have in mind. Her armor profile is reasonable. All in all, she is basically your, still kind of basically your run-of-the-mill, Tier 6 aircraft carrier as far as any of her armor profile goes. The only real major difference is just the very... I'm going to go so far as to say underperforming aircraft for the tier. The only real aircraft that are benefiting her in this iteration is the fact that she does have the Blackburn Skuas for her rocket attack aircraft, but she does still use the Fairy Swordfish for both her dive bombers and her torpedo bombers, which makes her, well, yeah, just kind of slow to work around with overall. So that is, you are definitely going to invest a lot of effort into just trying to bring out her aircraft a little bit better, just to bring their speed up and just make them even just a little bit more comfortable to work with in the long run. Finally, getting into the stats of the ship, she does have 44,500 hit points on her hull. Her aircraft are where some of these numbers matter substantially. The Blackburn Skuas have 1,820 hit points baseline, with Survivability Expert that would go up to 1,970. They have a 121 knot base speed with a 161 max speed with engine boost. There are 9 aircraft per squadron with 3 attack groups per squadron, and she can have a maximum of 14 on deck, and this is going to be pretty much constant for the torpedoes and dive bombers as well. The attack aircraft also have a 48-second restoration time with air supremacy that will be dropped down to 46 seconds. The rockets, there are 4 per aircraft. They do a maximum of 1,500 damage per rocket, have a maximum penetration of 26 millimeters of armor, 5% fire chance. For the torpedo and dive bombers, these are the Fairy Swordfish that you are currently seeing me make the run with. They have a health pool of 1,550 hit points, or 1,700 with Survivability Expert, also with the appropriate modifications in the background right at the moment. That is 1,613 hit points without Survivability Expert on the torpedo bombers. That could also be 1,613 if you opt for the dive bomber health module instead. And of course that would still be boosted further by Survivability Expert once that was applied. The Swordfish do have a maximum speed baseline of 98 knots, and with engine boost that can go up to 133 knots. The torpedo bombers restore in 59 seconds, 56 seconds with air supremacy, or if the dive bombers are being taken into consideration, they restore in 56 seconds, and that is 53 seconds after air supremacy is taken. As far as the bombs these aircraft carry, they do 2,300 damage max with an 8.7% fire chance. There are 8 per aircraft, so with 3 aircraft that is 24 bombs per drop, and they have a maximum penetration of 19 millimeters of armor. The torpedoes do 5,200 maximum damage with 1 per aircraft. They have a base speed of 35 knots, 40 after taking torpedo acceleration, and the torpedoes have a 2.4 kilometer range, or 1.9 kilometers once, again, torpedo acceleration is taken, and they have a 329 meter arming distance. As far as the secondary armament of the aircraft carrier, she does have 8 double 113mm cannons, though if you are getting this ship into close quarters engagements, you're kind of in the wrong place anyway, but that's another matter entirely. As far as her AA, she does have a base rating of 61. She has 8 quadruple 50 caliber mounts, which she has 6 octuple 40mm mounts, and she also has the 8 double 113 dual purpose mounts, which give her her flak capabilities. As far as the DPS, her short range is 39 damage per second, mid-range 231 damage per second, and the long range, the flak bursts do 1190 damage per second within the bursts, and there are 4 bursts per salvo. And the DPS overall for the range is 95. As far as the hull's maneuverability, she does make 31 knots, she has a 990 meter turning circle, and her rudder shifts in 12.8 seconds. For her concealment, she is seen on the surface at 14 kilometers, and by aircraft she is seen at 11.8 kilometers. So definitely not great numbers in some regards, but not exactly bad either. In fact, I'm almost tempted to say she's probably one of the stronger AA aircraft carriers as well at Tier 6, though I could very well be mistaken. In fact, looking back briefly at her counterparts at Tier 6 in the tech tree, the Ryujo has an AA rating of 54, the Ranger has an AA rating of 56, and the Furious has an AA rating of 57. So this does, in fact, make her one of the strongest aircraft carriers from an AA standpoint for self-defense and the like. For her tier, the hull's health pool is second only to the Ranger at 44,900 hit points, so she is reasonably good in that regard from an aircraft carrier standpoint. As far as her surface speed, she is second only to the HMS Furious, which reaches 31.5 knots. The Ryujo and the Ranger both receive sub 30 knot surface speeds. Also, in regards to her maneuverability, with a turning circle of 990 meters, she has the second tightest turning circle, comparable only to that of the Ryujo at, I think, 770 meters. Both the Ranger and the Furious have upwards of 1,000 meter turning circles. As far as her overall direct stats, her only real failing point is her concealment, in that she is the aircraft carrier with the largest surface detection range at 14 kilometers. The Ranger, by comparison, is at 13.8 kilometers, so only just slightly better, but still better. The Furious has a surface detection range of 12 kilometers, and the Ryujo has the smallest surface detection range of all of them at 9.6 kilometers, making her a nice, stealthy little aircraft carrier. So she's definitely not going to be winning any concealment contests anytime soon. Also, please keep in mind that these are her concealment stats without concealment expert taken into account, and considering you're not exactly going to be getting the jump on anybody with your aircraft or anything like that anyway, personally, I don't think concealment expert is anything that is worth investing in for your aircraft carrier at this tier anyway. Her biggest struggling point overall, though, is simply the low speed of her basically primary armament aircraft, which are the Fairy Swordfish torpedo and attack bombers. That 98 knots is so anemic, even at this tier, that it's difficult to really get anywhere to do anything over the course of the match. In fact, I think the only reason that I managed to get the damage that I did in the first match you've seen for the review was because I got lucky. In this third match, as you're going to see, I barely get a chance to do anything, primarily because of the very, very low speed of the aircraft, and I'll even admit a couple of just rushed shots that I ultimately ended up just missing overall. Especially looking at this enemy Akotnik. Lord knows I could have aimed a lot better trying to get those attacks out, and that probably would have helped out my overall damage results somewhat, but not spectacularly. Fully upgraded, the worst aircraft carrier aircraft that you deal with are already doing, 112 knots, I believe? So they've got better part of 14 knots on your torpedo and dive bombers. Granted, it's still slow, but every little bit of speed counts when you're playing in an aircraft carrier, because you're generally going to be hiding towards the back of the map or towards the back of the line, and you're going to have to get your aircraft to target every single time. It's not like the frontline ships where you're capable of getting armament on target instantly. No, you've got to take time to get there, and well, again, for an aircraft carrier, speed does matter, and, well, not having it in the case of the Ark Royal is definitely something that she has to contend with, which is why for any of her skills, I would definitely move away from any of the concealment skills or anything like that, and just do everything you possibly can to get the most out of the engine boosts and the overall airspeed of your aircraft, just to try and get them out there just a little bit faster, a little bit easier, and basically just make her ultimately usable in the long run. I will personally admit that I did not use a highly skilled captain on the Ark Royal for the test matches, simply because I wanted to see just what she was capable of from somebody who bought her outright without a skilled commander. And honestly, looking back at it, I'm kind of almost wishing that I had put my Audacious commander on the Ark Royal for these matches, just because it would have made her perform just a little bit better, a little bit more consistently, maybe. But I mean, overall, it was definitely interesting to see what the limitations were in her base form without too many captain skills applied. And it's definitely something that told quite the story in regards to what you can do and exactly why this ship exists as she is in the game. And, well, to not put too fine a point on it, she exists in the game as she is purely for the historical significance. She is certainly not going to be a competitive ship, not by any stretch of the imagination, and she is going to suffer in matches against really just about any other aircraft carrier. And if she is up-tiered against, say, even just tier 7s, oh lord, I do wish you all the luck in the world, because you're going to have a hell of a time against that AA, even with any of the appropriate commander skills applied. I mean, I got lucky for the test matches. I was only put into, at most, tier 6 matches. But even then, it was difficult to really get anywhere in this ship. I imagine having to face off against tier 8s, your Bismarcks, which is the most notable historical ship that she encountered. She's just going to suffer, and she's going to suffer very badly for it. So that is something to just kind of have in the back of your mind, is she will not, by any stretch of the imagination, up-tier well. She doesn't even really fit in with her tier 6 counterparts very well, aside from the fact that they are contemporaries from timeline perspective, and also simply from the fact that as a tier 4, I think she would actually be a little too powerful. So she's probably a good, solid tier 6 as a top tier 6. Definitely not something that you want to be up-tiered in at all. But that is really about all there is to say about her. She is very capable, very good, and definitely a nice ship to have in your port if you are looking for a ship that just has that extensive historical significance that the Ark Royal does. I will say that one of the things that Wargaming might want to consider doing for the Ark Royal. And granted, they probably should have done this before release, but I do think that they do need to give the option for her to have Blackburn Skuas as an optional secondary aircraft. That way, players who have the Ark Royal can choose to either go with her historical configuration or with something that is at least marginally more competitive for the tier and capable of holding her own in the long run compared to the other aircraft carriers. Because as it is with just the historical outlook on her, she's really not gonna be the most pleasing aircraft carrier to work with. And I do have to admit that overall, she's definitely going to take some getting used to, if nothing else, for those who wish to have her in their port and play with her. Now, again, if you're just looking for the historical significance and enjoy playing the ship from that regard, awesome, all power to you. But for those players who are out there who want to have a nice competitive ship, unless they decide to give her other aircraft, another option for her aircraft for competitive matches or whatnot, this ship isn't for you. And I will freely come out and say that. Anyway, that is my review of the Tier 6 HMS Ark Royal. I hope you found this informative, and I hope to catch you all again next time. Happy hunting, folks. Stay safe out there.